I know this video is a bit late, but I only recently decided I wanted to make it. I went to Mythcon this year, and it was an interesting experience. For those who don't know, Mythcon is a conference hosted by an organization called Mythicist Milwaukee. A mythicist is someone who believes that Jesus did not really exist. This is a minority view among biblical scholars, even the atheist ones. There seems to be only two prominent scholars who espouse it, Richard Carrier and Robert Price. I think the original purpose of Mythcon was to be a conference surrounding this topic. Recently, they've decided to expand to other topics, although atheism and skepticism still seem to be a central theme. Because they invite so many YouTubers to speak on their panels, Mythcon has become a de facto, if not de jure, atheist YouTuber conference. That's not really what the organizers intended it to be, but that's how I describe it to my non-YouTuber friends. And the reaction to that assertion is often surprised that YouTube atheism is a big enough social phenomenon to attract enough people to fill a conference. The place wasn't completely packed, but I wouldn't say it was sparsely attended either. In fact, one of the best things about going to Mythcon was that I could finally hang out with people who know the inside baseball of this corner of YouTube. With anybody else, if you start saying shit like, "Did you see what Shoeonhead said? Did you watch that video Creationist Cat made?" They'll say, "What the fuck are you talking about? What are these shoes and cats you speak of?" Recently, the conference has focused on debates between folks in the social justice sphere and those in the anti-SJW community. Since it's hosted by folks who lean more toward the anti-SJW side, most of the panelists and the vast majority of the audience often seem pretty hostile to those of us of the opposite persuasion. This was especially the case on stage. In person, the interactions were less heated, and even the unfriendly interactions seemed relatively lighthearted.
Hey, Carl! Carl! Sargon! Fuck you!
But I enjoyed hanging out with my YouTube friends. Brittany Simon is always fun. It was great to meet Michael Rollins and Chrisiosity. I think I fanboyed a little too much meeting Vadim Newquist, because as soon as I saw him, I gasped with excitement and interrupted the conversation he was having with the conference organizers to introduce myself. He was very friendly about it, though. I spent most of my time hanging out with those folks, but I also had good conversations with June, Greg, Venaloid, and some of the other folks less sympathetic to my worldview. This conference has been controversial. A lot of people refuse to participate because it does have a history of being occasionally very sketchy. Brittany did a great video about her first time attending the conference and why it was at points quite terrible.
So I can sit here and try to understand them better, but I will tell you, I did not pay $125 to hear an audience make rape jokes. I did not pay $125 to hear Carl and Thomas yell at each other like two drunks at a bar. I did not pay $125 to learn absolutely nothing more than I could have learned watching YouTube videos.
The conference organizers listened and invited Brittany to moderate one of their panels this year. The panel she did with Theron Meyer, Angel Bonilla, and Blair White was my favorite one. It was a productive discussion.
I feel like TERFs are definitely cancer. I feel like, you know, I always...
TERFs are cancer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Unlike some of the other panels.
Crap, right? The only reason, no, that is absolute crap and you know, right? The only reason, no, shut up. The only reason we can have these conversations...
Since some of what has gone on at Mythcon has been pretty horrible, there is some dispute over whether it should even be attended. What I think we have to weigh when considering this is the danger of legitimizing some pretty ugly things by engaging with them, against the danger of relinquishing this platform to them completely. And I'm actually still on the fence about which is the greater danger. I did go, but my primary motivation, to be frank, was that I really just wanted to hang out with my friends, which was super fun, by the way. The reason I'm still on the fence is because, on the one hand, the audience as a whole didn't really seem to change their minds about much, but on the other hand, some individuals did seem to come away better informed. Chrisiosity and I were watching one of the early panels, and Hunter Avallone, a young conservative political pundit whom TJ Kirk refers to as Ben Shapiro Jr., sat next to us and introduced himself. He then said, "No offense, but if I see any YouTubers, I'm going to get up and go sit next to them." Chrisiosity and I both kind of laughed at that, but later she gave a great talk explaining intersectionality.
So Kimberly Crenshaw was a lawyer, and she was talking about, she was a black woman, and she was talking about lawsuits. That was one of the first things that she came up with, and she says, you know, these discrimination suits come forward, and for one thing, she talked about a discrimination suit that had to do with black women, specifically in a big car company. So this car company, it would hire white women as like secretaries or whatnot, and it would hire black men to be on the floor. But black women were just screwed. They didn't have a place because they lived at the intersection. So when she came forward and they came and tried to bring this suit and said, look, you can't just not hire us because we're black women. They said, well, they hire women, so they can't be sexist. And they hire black men, so they can't be racist. So you have no case. And we might all sit here and think, that makes no fucking sense, right? But the legal system didn't have a framework.
In this case, the plaintiff asked to be able to defend herself against both gender discrimination and racial discrimination, since she was subjected to both simultaneously. The court said no because they believed that that would give her an unfair advantage. This is silly, of course, because if she is subjected to both forms of discrimination, what is unfair about being able to defend herself against both? This seems like common sense to me, which is why I agree with intersectionality. However, this clear, concise explanation of intersectionality seems to be something that anti-feminists rarely hear. Because Hunter later thanked Chrisiosity for her talk and noted that nobody had ever explained intersectionality to him that way before. The event organizers seem to believe very strongly that discourse is a powerful means of diffusing conflict and resolving differences. I think they take this a bit far. Sometimes engagement can't really get anywhere or solve anything, especially not in a live debate, which is primarily a performance for an audience. That being said, I believe that the hearts and minds that can be won should be won. There was a bomb threat. At the time they started evacuating the building, I was in the bathroom and a security guard came in and asked if there was anyone else in there, and I said no. I had no idea what that was about, so when I headed back to the auditorium and everyone was evacuating, I didn't know what was going on.
There was a bomb scare and it was surprisingly fun. Okay, so there was a bomb threat that was called in. I'm really disappointed with this turn of events. I think that the Mythcon Milwaukee guys really dropped the ball on this line.
They have deplatformed me.
Once I was outside and someone explained that there had been a bomb threat, I decided to go get some lunch, hoping that the issue would be cleared up by the time I got back, and fortunately it was. It was surprisingly uneventful. So that was Mythcon. Apparently they're not doing a Mythcon next year. Instead, they're going to have smaller events in various locations instead of just Milwaukee. This year's Mythcon was better than last year, and I hope whatever format they adopt continues that trend of improvement.